But now I would love to invite up to the front three incredible speakers. Kalpana Satish from Maybelline, Caroline Vaters, and I hope I pronounced that right. Yes. From Uber Ads, and Evangeline Sarney, who is an industry expert. And we are going to be talking about a really topical area of conversation related to whether demographic targeting is still relevant, how we engage across generations in an evolving market. So lots of exciting discussion points for us to get through. But perhaps before we jump in to the discussion itself, I would love to give you all an opportunity to introduce yourselves to the audience. And eventually, maybe we can start with you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Evangeline. I wear a lot of hats. I'm a brand storyteller. I do consulting on branding and identity, done a lot of copywriting stuff in the past. And over the past 2 years, I've been diving a lot deeper into the generative AI space, specifically how that can be used for content creation, specifically within the beauty vertical, no fashion, no anything else, just beauty, a little bit of beauty as well. That's one of my favorite things to talk about, and I do consulting in that space for beauty brands who are looking to integrate it into their creative teams and marketing teams.
Thank you.
I'm Caroline. I have been in the media world for quite a while now. Got my start at Amazon, sort of at the forefront of retail media, kind of building out the premium beauty category. Then went advisory side at Boston Consulting Group after earning my MBA. Did a lot of like MarTech transformations at Fortune 500 companies. Now back to my roots, sort of leading the beauty vertical at Uber Ads, partnering with many of the brands in this room to sort of reimagine what the future of mobility advertising looks like. So I'm super happy to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Kalpana. I'm the data activation lead at Maybelline. I spent my entire career in the MarTech space, so implementations, assessments, operating on MarTech platforms for various clients when I was in consulting. And as of late at Maybelline, I manage the acquisition, storage, and function and activation of data across all of our own platforms.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all. And thank you for making the time today. I think it's going to be fascinating to hear three very different perspectives on the conversation topics. But let's dive straight in. And Caroline, perhaps I can start with you for this first question. Now, I'd love just to hear your take on how brands can balance demographic targeting against interest-based targeting to really engage a multi-generational audience, but in a very effective way. And, it'd be great to hear a little bit about your view on whether age demographics still play a critical role in this, or whether there are other data points around whether it's shared values or interests, whether they are more of a priority right now.
Yeah, so I think demographic targeting will always have a place in the media world. I don't think it's going away. I think our understanding of it is sort of evolving. I think like age, gender, all these sorts of things provide useful context, but they don't tell the full story, right? Like the way I like to think about it is sort of complementing or layering demographic targeting with understanding of a demand space. So like what's motivating a specific customer to buy something in a specific moment. So I think, demographics add sort of a layer of nuance, but I don't think that it's the end all be all. So the starting point used to be females 18 to 44. Maybe now the starting point can be, okay, who is actually motivated by ingredient transparency and efficacy? And let's start there. At Uber, we think about this a lot. Obviously, we have this sort of rich contextual space in the backseat of your car. You're spending 20 plus minutes going to and from. So we think a lot about how can we target people on the way to a concert, on the way to a sports event, or even in daily moments, picking up their meeting rituals from Sephora, things like that. So certainly a lot of innovation coming in that space. But yes, I think it's sort of a both and. I don't think it's going away, but we're becoming smarter about how we use it.
Thank you. Kalpana, I'd love to hear your view from the brand's perspective.
Yeah, for sure. I think for us, we tend to cast like a really wide net for a lot of our acquisition campaigns or our awareness campaigns. Similar to what Shelby said earlier, we want to catch consumers that aren't already familiar with the brand or don't have that relationship with the brand. So I don't think we put as much emphasis on the interest-based or demographic-based targeting. But then I think for the lower funnel tactics, when it comes to like email targeting or SMS, when we already kind of know that they have a relationship with the brand, we want to put more emphasis on layering what we know about the consumer in those conversations that we're having for them. So I think it's a fine balance of trying to find where you want to use what you know about them at what part of the funnel.
When you talk about sort of layering all those different data points in, how does personalization play into this?
Oh, I think it's so important because if you're not personalizing now, you're like really behind the game. Consumers know that we have their data. We know that they're giving it to us. So we really are expected to be able to tailor whatever we're saying to them, whether it comes to product recommendations or what samples we're serving them. It's really important to be able to show the consumer we're like creating that personalized experience for them. So I think it's so important, even when it's just saying like, hey, Kalpana in an email, it makes all the difference because I know that they're talking to me and it makes me a little bit more interested in what they have to say.
Yeah. Awesome. And Evangeline, you obviously work with a number of different clients. How are you helping them leverage new tools and technologies to achieve some of this personalization? And are you seeing any measurable sort of uplift from personalized campaigns as opposed to something which is more generic films, not specifically talking to me?
Yeah. So especially that point to, the hyper personalization, I think that's so true. And my point that I would love to make, especially Caroline, you made an amazing point about the ingredient specific trend of, consumers being interested in those sorts of things. I think AI is an amazing way, obviously, to help with that. I know everybody's probably sick of hearing AI through panels, all that. But generative AI specifically, there's so many ways, and I've had clients that I've worked with, we're still measuring a lot of that data, where we're using generative AI to really tailor emails based on specific brand storytelling moments rather than just, a consumer data point like age, location, etc. So really looking at what they're using, what they're loving, using, something like data from SoPost would obviously be amazing in that retrospect to really look at what are these consumers liking, what are they shopping for, what is their feedback as well about these products, and then how can we kind of tailor that messaging to speak to very specific touch points within a product to, drive that conversion and make sure that they've got that education and that they're also passionate about the products as well.
Awesome. And on the topic of AI, there's so much out there now.
Yeah.
I'm midway through a course all about how to use AI effectively in my work life, and I was shocked to discover I can make music now. I can do pretty much anything. Are there specific tools or products that you're really finding it valuable?
I have a lot of opinions about AI. That I could do a whole panel and podcast about that on itself. I think a lot of the technology now, we're going to see so much of just ChatGPT or all these things. They are elevating and going to market with so many new tools at such a space that a lot of these B2B SaaS solutions aren't necessarily gonna be your greatest investment 3 to 5 years down the line. That's my personal opinion. That being said, there are some really great tools out there that actually have data that maybe you as a brand don't have access to. I think those are the tools that have value. So Magic Brief and Madman, and there's one called Aphrodite as well. They actually look at a lot of predictive ads within the meta space. So they'll do heat mapping, imagining, okay, what is a 24-year-old who is a man who's shopping for Valentine's Day? What area of this image is actually going to get the most results? Where are these people going to be clicking? And actually using a lot of predictive insights and analytics in order to be able to, suggest, okay, this is an image that we would suggest for this campaign. Click, generate it. Now you've got a different image based on each kind of consumer or person that you want to reach.
Amazing. It's a cool product names as well.
Yeah.
Caroline, how does this look from the Uber perspective?
I think AI is on Uber's mind all the time. We're a 3-year-old ad business now, net annual revenue of $1 billion. So it's something that we know will be part of the future. I think we've done some experimentation where I think for us it will come into play will be as we get a little bit more agile on sort of like our search and discovery platform. How can we auto optimize to make sure that those campaigns are good performance and sort of improve that product. On the mobility side, I think there's lots of creative ways that Uber is thinking about AI, whether it's partnering with other vendors who have solutions and can do it from a turnkey perspective or building it ourselves. I think we're asking ourselves that question, is it a build-in or a buy-in? So it's definitely a hot topic, more to come.
And on the personalization front, are you building a lot of stuff internally related to that? I imagine though, so much ride data about where I'm going, the cars I'm taking. Like, I imagine that's such an incredible plugin to allow you to personalize it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our ads business, especially on the mobility side, is really built on this premise that we have a really rich data set. So we know where people are going in the past and then in a real contextual moment when it's actually happening. And then we also have sort of eats data, right? Which tells us more about purchase behavior. We actually do sell beauty products through Eats now. So I think our aim is to be sort of like this one-stop shop where you can go anywhere or get anything. And so that sort of gives us a nice data set that brands can leverage to sort of personalize their campaigns in ways that they couldn't before.
Now, Kalpana, you obviously have a ton of data within the CRM. You know, from your perspective, how are you thinking about leveraging not just AI technology, but the data alongside it? You know, kind of what role do you see that playing in making personalized experiences, particularly to the diverse audiences, really impactful and meaningful, and to do it also across a number of different consumer segments?
Definitely. I think especially being a beauty brand, AI is difficult when it comes to creative because you want to be mindful that you don't want to put a lot of like AI generated images or anything in front of the consumer because they want to see real people trying that real product so that they can relate to it. But then I think when it comes from a data perspective, like it's really important to leverage that in your audience targeting. I think there's some, like you could say like, hey, include the name and then maybe tailor it to like a category preference, that rich data that we know on the consumer. But it's super important to be able to leverage it from an audience perspective. I think there's a fine balance between leveraging a lot of these media platforms capabilities that they have to real-time optimize to be able to determine which message makes the most sense for the consumer at that point in time. But then also backing it up with like, okay, Kalpana is interested in lip products. That's how she entered the brand. Let's start there and then see how her engagement like evolves with that consumer. And maybe she's not interested in lip anymore. Maybe it's face. So how do we like kind of, you know, balance both together? And I think it's an ongoing conversation. I think it's something they're still trying to crack, but I think you definitely have to back it up with what you know because the consumer and it's not that to you.
Awesome. Anything to add? No? Cool. Well, that actually leads me on quite nicely to the next question, which is really around, you know, what strategies have you seen be effective in identifying and engaging the brand's most loyal advocates, particularly in fast-moving spaces like beauty? I guess a lot of it touches on what you just mentioned, but Caroline, you know, I'd love to hear again from your brand's perspective, and then again from brand side, and of course, anything from the sort of industry perspective as well.
I can kick it off. I think the best loyalty programs that I've seen in the beauty world and otherwise are not just about purchase frequency. I think that's sort of a given, but it's how do you get insiders to be emotionally connected to the brand? And I think there's so many ways that you can do that: rewards, incentives, sort of propping up voices. I know Elf does this really well. I think it can be as simple as sort of posting a unboxing video for someone who maybe doesn't have a massive following onto your socials, or it could be an early product drop, something exclusive and gated, or creating sort of an opportunity for loyalists to meet up in real life. I think loyalists want their voices to be heard, they want to be acknowledged, and just having a discount isn't always enough. From Uber's perspective, we have a loyalty program that's called Uber One. Almost half of our user base is now part of that program. We kind of enter with a rich gated offer, but when we say an offer, we're not just talking, 50% off X product delivery on Uber Eats. We're trying to sort of up the ante a little bit and say, like, how can we make this a never been seen before offer? Get you sort of a summer supply of sunscreen if you're an Uber One member, or a free flight, an experience that may not feel endemic to where at first, but is a surprise and delight sort of reward. So more to come on that in May. So keep your ears out.
I know we spoke about that a little bit, and I'm very excited about some of the stuff that's coming down the line. So I'm a loyal Uber rider. So that's like the most fun. Yeah, I think it's so interesting when we think about consumer loyalty, right? And I think even like we're here on Broadway, and so how many times have I walked up and down this street and seen food trucks and sampling moments and people wrapped around the corner, which I think is such a testament to how much people really want to get their hands on stuff, be part of an experience, and really feel the brand. And I think a lot of these experiences as well, when it comes to consumer loyalty, we all know of all of these fancy influencer brand trips, getting on their yachts, their flights, everything else. And now seeing so many brands actually look at their most loyal consumers and using them as a way to put them into that process. I think it's phenomenal. I used to be a beauty blogger. That's how I started my career. So I went on every fancy lunch and yachts on the Sydney Harbour, at lunchtime. And it was great, but sometimes there was a point where I felt like that experience was wasted on me. So I think there's so much value in tapping into your actual consumers who are buying those products, who live and die for your brand. If I was a regular consumer and somebody was sending me on a brand trip, I would buy those products until the day I die, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think from a brand side, especially as a brand that doesn't have a loyalty program, so we can actively be like, these are consumers that really value you. We do these sampling moments and we do these giveaways and sweepstakes. That's like a lot of our bread and butter as a brand, because we want our everyday consumer to know that they have the opportunity to try the product, be gifted the product, and then hopefully nurture them that way. Where that they can feel more loyal to the brand and want to, try other things across different categories. So I think we are still trying to crack the code, because when we're non-B2C and we're specifically focused on the consumer going to the store or retailer partners to buy the product, we have to be really creative with how we can kind of tap them on the shoulder and be like, hey, we really value you. It's just that you have to buy it at the retailer. So we leverage a lot of our tools and services on our site as well, such as our virtual try-on, these quizzes that we have on the site. All of that in combination with our sampling and our giveaway is really how we offer our incentives to the consumer, to show that we're giving all of these different avenues at their disposal to be able to learn more about the brand and what products work for them.
Awesome. But in terms of your younger consumers, how do you go about really connecting with them and building that relationship?
Yes. As we know, Gen Z is very vocal and very free to say what they want on all of the social platforms that are available at their disposal. And I think that's something as a brand we really need to tap into. And I think a lot of brands should. Being able to do a sampling, for example, and then have consumers get a product, try it on, maybe post a video about it or have a review left about it. I think that's all very important in saying we want to hear what you have to say about our products and about our brand, because that only makes us stronger as a brand. So we really tap into these acquisition methods so that the consumer feels like they have that avenue to share their feedback. I also think for Gen Z specifically, we've been trying a lot of content and creative testing. I think it's really important for us to try and see different messages, see what resonates. For example, in some of our acquisition campaigns, we've really seen that Get Ready With Me videos still perform very well. Consumers want to see the product being applied before they're like, oh, I'm going to claim this sample or I'm going to enter for this giveaway. But then we've also seen just a static image saying, we're giving away this mascara, performed extremely well too, because they're the urgency is there and I need to get this mascara before it goes away. And then they may fall in love with it, but it's a gamble that we have to take. So a lot of different things that we're trying right now.
Awesome. And we heard from Shelby about the amazing media performance that they've seen on TikTok. Are you seeing certain channels perform better or worse when it comes to the Gen Z audience?
Yes. Meta is our best friend. They definitely perform really well, especially in getting those low CPLs. But I think I'm always of the testing mentality. I like to, broaden the reach on the different platforms that we're going on, especially because now more and more so with all these platforms, there's such a huge overlap between where the beauty consumer is versus like other channels, for example, gaming channels, and then also like for if it's like on Uber ads, for example, or on Amazon media, like for influencer partnerships, there's just so much overlap and you're tapping into a whole new audience. I do think at some point we might reach meta fatigue. So we need to start exploring other avenues for that.
Cool. And one follow up on that, really, just because I'm curious, we talk a lot about influencers and the creator space, and there's so much change happening all the time. From the perspective of trust amongst that younger consumer, are you seeing that you're able to build it more easily with nano and like with influencers? Is there still a huge benefit to working with some of the really, really people with huge followings?
Yeah. I think we've all probably seen that, like the influencer industry can be volatile, right? You say one thing wrong and then you're like canceled. So I think we have to be very diligent about who we work with, whether it's nano or a macro influencer. And I think we've also just, regardless of the size, like I think if we obviously partner with a macro influencer, we reach a lot of our KPIs, right? Getting rid of like samples really fast, having a low CPL, having like high impressions. I think it's just a testament to the following that the person has. But I don't think it necessarily always means the content is relatable, because to some level, influencers are like celebrities nowadays. So I think we have to have a balance of it. We always test with a micro and a macro to see which one performs better, which one resonates with a certain demographic. So my mantra is always testing. So test, and see what works best.
I love that. And Caroline, how do you think about going after this younger customer?
Yeah, I think for Uber in general, we tend to skew younger more naturally. A lot of our core audience demographic grew up on Uber. So it's not something that we're necessarily trying to do. But it's certainly like a core area of strength for our platform. Where I think it comes to a head for brands specifically working with us is that Uber is kind of the center of culture, right? Like when you are going to the Taylor Swift concert, it's the last touch point where you get dropped off, or the WNBA game. If you are, really excited about that, you get in your Uber, have a good experience, it's convenient, and then you get to have a great experience at this sporting event. So I think it's again about like meeting Gen Z where they are, and they are taking Ubers to events, cultural moments, and in the everyday.
Amazing, thank you. Kalpana, this one might be back to you again. But another thing that we think about a lot is targeting. And on one level, we want to reach as many people as possible. On the other hand, and particularly when we start playing with personalization, we want to be really, really focused and specific. How do you find that balance? And how do you think about perhaps the risk of broadening the targeting slightly, but then potentially having the wrong message served to the wrong customer?
Yeah. I think like I mentioned earlier, it's all about tapping into different parts of the consumer funnel or the marketing funnel and for the consumer journey. We try to think about everything like end to end. Like how are we acquiring this consumer for this particular product? How are we planning on like nurturing them? How are we going to get them to convert? How are we going to keep them from lapsing? Like it's the whole funnel. And when it comes to media, I think there's a lot of levers you can pull, especially when it's like an acquisition campaign or maybe it's like awareness media or consideration media. I think there's so many different levers, but we want to stay close to whatever is active and live. I think being able to still have that human touch of like, okay, we're monitoring this campaign, we're monitoring the messaging. This audience is really resonating with it, but this one isn't. So how do we work in real time to get new creative out that might resonate better? I think it's learning to be really agile and be accepting of the fact that if your campaign is not successful, like how can we just shut it down and think of something new to bring back up? We have to be okay with that amount of failure to be able to actually put out a message that makes sense to the consumer.
Amazing. I mean, from my experience of observing L'Oreal from the outside, it seems like there's such a strong mentality around testing quickly and then really doubling down on what's working. And it's been really amazing to see how that culture's developed within your organization. And I guess to put myself in your shoes, what an amazing place to be where we can test stuff and really learn as we go.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I think we have the luxury of having fellow brands that can test certain things and then we learn from that. Although the consumer is very different brand to brand, I will say. It's nice to see like, oh, we have a Garnier testing on Pinterest and it works really well for an acquisition campaign. So let's maybe try that for Maybelline because it may be as successful. So it's nice to have those shared learnings.
Awesome. I love it. Now, Evangeline, here's one for you. I want to go back to talk about demographic targeting. Again, the space is moving so quickly, whether it's AI or data privacy rules that are constantly changing. What's your take on how this is going to change in the next 5 to 10 years? Big question.
In beauty specifically, I think it's going to really change the way that we develop products. And I think the way that product development cycles change, the way in which I'm thinking about healthcare when you're thinking about all the new SKUs that you're making. I think we're really going to be able to look at data and see how that affects the product development cycle, how that affects the innovations, the formulas that brands are coming out with. And then that's really going to funnel through to what are the products that brands are launching, right? So that high personalization element is super important there. And that demographic targeting, being able to actually create products that a Gen Z consumer are really going to love, but then also making sure that you're not alienating, a Gen X consumer. And I think that is where a lot of brands kind of go wrong. It's all, oh my gosh, we have to get Gen Z, but what about, the 50-year-old voyagist who has been using this brand for, decades and her mum was using it? I think it's going to be really interesting to see how a brand can leverage data, especially in this AI space, to come up with new products to then actually hyper-personalize them to each individual category. And I think there's a lot more to come within that space. Again, it's a little bit more... I don't know if that was fully your question, speaking a little bit more of product development, but in terms of, demographic targeting, I think it is going to be a lot more driven based on consumer needs versus based on demographics specifically, and looking a little bit more at what consumers are shopping for. And that might be, a 23-year-old might actually be shopping for the same thing as what a 40-year-old is. We don't know how they're actually shopping right now in terms of, is it ingredient focused, is it formula focused, is it benefit focused, and then being able to really target based on those pillars versus just age, sex, location, etc.
So a real move to more data, more useful data, more actionable
100%.
data.
And I think, with so many cookie policies now and first-party data, that is just going to change things up. We're already seeing the effects of that, and I think we're going to continue to see the effects of that, which is why brands having first-party data is so important. And especially if you are a brand that is ever looking to integrate AI, your data as a brand is one of the most valuable things that you have. You should be keeping that. And I'm not just talking about data in terms of demographics. I'm talking about data overall, the campaigns that you're running, the copy that you're using, the visuals that you're using. You should be keeping all of that because 3 to 5, 10 years down the line, that is going to be the one of the most assets.
For sure. Caroline, how are you thinking about these changes and shifts over the next few years?
For me, it's sort of a simple answer. I think hyper-personalization with the advent of AI just becomes bigger, faster, and stronger. So I would say it's table stakes now. I think the level of personalization will only continue to improve, and consumers will continue to expect sort of a high bar from that perspective. We would sort of get to the peak of this AI revolution.
I mean, I think what is that really resonated because Maybelline is such a heritage brand. It's been around for so long. So many generations have grown up with it. Their moms, their grandmothers. So it's really interesting because now we're starting to see that we can't just say that this particular content or creative or messaging or even product is only for Gen Z. We're seeing the interest from our loyal consumers across generations. And we're starting to kind of bring back the emphasis on some of our key products from the past that really resonated at that moment in time and see how we can kind of rejudge them up for the future. So I think it's really it's not going to be as rigid as maybe just being like this generation gets this generation gets that. I think we have to be able to like have a campaign or have a product messaging that is more malleable than that. That can actually be like across generations. Like how can you use it and how can your mom use it as well? Or how can it be used across different demographics? So I think it's like I said, going back to testing, I think it's about testing different campaign messaging, but also making sure that the value of the product and the value of the brand doesn't get lost in all of the content that you could potentially put out there.
Awesome. So AI, data, test.
Yes.
Love it. Love it when things come in threes.
Yeah.
This has been amazing. I have one final question for you, and then I think we have some time to open it up to the audience. It wouldn't be a sampling summit without about product sampling. So, Kalpana, if I can come to you, how can brands use sampling to connect with target audiences and discover new consumer segments? And what methods have you found have been really effective in generating not just the trial, but the advocacy that comes afterwards?
Yeah, no, definitely. I would say sampling is one of our primary acquisition methods. It helps me meet my goals as an employee every year, so I fully stand by it. Something as of late that we've been trying to, really test and validate a lot more is the integration of our tools and services, which is what we call it, or our virtual try-on, or quizzes that we have on site as part of the sampling experience. We don't want the consumer to feel like we're just like throwing our product at them. We want them to feel like they have a choice in the matter. And we've seen such great engagement with it. Like consumers actually want to take our mascara quiz, understand like what type of mascara actually works for them before they claim it. And so creating that more seamless experience is like my next goal. Working with SoPost, but sampling has really been important, not only for us to try new products, but we've also been doing a lot of like E&O, so getting rid of the excess products and then seeing that consumers are actually really liking the product that we were just trying to get rid of. So how can we bring it back in a more fun, exciting way?
Love it. Caroline, I know we've been thinking a lot about sampling at the moment. Is there anything you can share?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most frequent inbound questions that I get. How can we sample with Uber? And we do this in two ways. So one, the more scalable route would be linking sort of like an in-app journey media takeover to a SoPost landing page that allows us to do it in a really scalable, turnkey way, privacy compliant. So we really loved working with SoPost on that. Now we're sort of thinking, okay, how do we take that and sort of imagine it in a beyond media way where a consumer might get a sample in a car. And that could look like a lot of different things. So if you're a luxury brand and you're going into Uber Black, maybe you get a surprise and delight luxury skincare brand sitting on the seat and you go to and from Art Basel. So, just one example, but it's definitely strong product market fit. And I think that it's something that we're going to continue to productize. We know that sampling is the most powerful tool in the marketer's toolkit. So we're still kind of imagining and frankly like creating with brands themselves, like what that could potentially look like. We're in this mobility space. I think people expect sort of a high level of execution from an out-of-home perspective, and we're delivering on that. So excited to see what the future of that looks like.
So if there could be a world where I'm in Milan for Beauty Week, I'm on my way to the Maybelline pop-up, and there's a fully integrated sampling experience within the vehicle.
Yes, sooner than this.
I love that.
Yeah.
If I was going somewhere and there was a free Maybelline mascara in the back of that car, I would be stoked. So I'm exploring this.
Well, thank you all so much. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. We do have time for questions, so please speak up, raise your hand if anyone has anything. And I'll pick on the SoPost team if nobody does.
I have a question on Maybelline, especially with loyalty and rest of the lack of a loyalty program. Was that a strategic decision? Was it something you guys are thinking about integrating, whether it's L'Oreal brands as a whole or for each of the individual brands? Just because I know loyalty programs are so important in beauty especially. So I'm just curious the thought on that.
Yeah. So I don't think we'll at any time do anything as L'Oreal as a whole. Every brand has such an individual voice and a very unique consumer that it's really hard to integrate because we have like 40 plus brands. So I don't think we would ever do that. From a loyalty program perspective for Maybelline, something that we are exploring the value of. I think there's something to say about making your consumer feel like really valuable, but it's also quite difficult from a mechanics perspective when we can't just say like, you can purchase this product on site or we can give you a promotion or an offer. Everything has to go through our retailer partners. So it makes it a little bit more challenging, and our retailer relationships are so valuable to us because they are the ones like, you know, showcasing our product, and they have their own loyalty program. So it would kind of come in the way of it. Something I'm still exploring personally, because I think there are different levers we could leverage, like sampling, like still giving that, but maybe we just work it through like CRM, you know, instead. So still up for debate.
Any final questions? No, I think that might be a wrap then. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. Shelby, a massive thank you to you as well. I really, really, really enjoyed the conversation.